Why this story matters. This piece offers a constructive counterpoint to the constant stream of negative news. Quick summary. This story highlights recent developments related to Australia, showing how constructive action can lead to meaningful results. Surrounded by vast sugarcane farms, pristine rainforest, empty beaches and lush waterfalls, Cameron Bates' new home of Ingham, a town in northern Australia, was a welcome breath of fresh air after the 16 years he'd spent living and working in Jakarta, Indonesia. In 2019, Bates moved into an apartment in the centre of Ingham, overlooking the town's main Rotary Park and just minutes away from the community's beloved Botanical Gardens, War Memorial, and adjacent green spaces. But these were also all locations that the town's population of flying foxes, members of the fruit bat family, had come to call home. While Ingham's flying foxes had taken up residence there for at least the previous decade, the colony was growing thanks to 4 different subspecies coming together to roost, resulting in a population so massive that at one point it was over 500,000. These figures far outnumbered the local human population of less than 5,000. Would you like to read more good news about Australia, climate, environment, biodiversity, bats and wildlife? At dusk, Bates would marvel at a nightly event. He quickly became accustomed to thousands of the native bats awakening for the evening and leaving the safety of their roost to forage for fruit and nectar before returning at dawn. The creatures would transform the night sky, their black silhouettes dancing across the sunset as their shrill cries echoed across town. Little did Bates realize that this natural phenomenon would come to consume his professional life and life in his new home, a sight to behold or an infestation that have reached biblical proportions. Credit, Hinchingbrooke Council. I never had an issue with the flying foxes as I had moved to the area from one of the most polluted, poverty-stricken cities on the planet, and I was then witnessing firsthand this incredible nightly spectacle, recalls Bates, a senior journalist at regional newspaper, the Townsville Bulletin. I was completely unaware of the depth of feeling against the flying foxes in the community, but it became the #1 issue over the next few years. In one of countless stories I wrote about it, I described it as an infestation that had reached biblical proportions. And then it got worse. A heat wave caused many of the flying foxes, which can carry a number of deadly viruses, to drop mid-flight, says Bates, falling into locations including local schoolyards, leading some parents to boycott sending their kids to school. Central amenities including Rotary Park, the Botanical Gardens and bus stops for the 2 local elementary schools had to be cordoned off, and businesses nearby had to close due to the sheer number of flying foxes rendering the area unsafe. The bats had also come to roost near a local kindergarten, which therefore had to close. The flying foxes had transformed their surroundings, and not for the better. Bat urine and feces covered the ground, and the animals completely decimated the very trees they were nesting in. In 2020, the swarm of bats was so thick that an emergency helicopter was not able to land at the nearby hospital. It was horrific, local Mayor Ramon Jao of the Hinchingbrooke Council says. The stench was unbelievable. The Botanical Gardens were a disaster. All the trees were shaggy. It was like a war zone. There was no going in there anymore. That really upset me because that's where our war memorial is, and it was disgraceful that we weren't maintaining that area because of these bats. They had to go. Mayor Jao was facing pressure from some residents to cull the animals, but flying foxes are protected in Australia, not just as a native species, but much like bees, as environmentally significant pollinators and seed dispersers. Every day I would get people telling me to shoot the flying foxes, but it would have been like a drop of water in a bucket, Mayor Jao says. We knew we'd come up with a better method because we're surrounded by pristine rainforests and mangroves, so it's not as if there was no habitat for them to go to. Previous councils had used one-off dispersal tactics, banging on drums and saucepans at dawn to disrupt the flying foxes on their return from feeding, prompting them to seek alternative accommodation. But this only had a temporary effect, as Mayor Jao would later find out that it would take a sustained effort lasting years to keep the bats at bay. At that point, Mayor Jao called in the experts. He signed a check for $300,000 and later released $1,500 to Biodiversity Australia, a private consultancy that specialises in working out a solution for when humans and wildlife clash. Hinchingbrooke Council then received a $60,040 grant from the state government of Queensland, where Ingham is located, to support its efforts. Stephen Noy and his team spent 3 months humanely relocating Ingham's resident flying fox population. Credit, Biodiversity Australia. At the helm of Biodiversity Australia is Stephen Noy, who founded the organisation in 2002 and who says he is yet to meet an animal he hasn't been able to persuade to move elsewhere, be it koala, kangaroo, snake, magpie, or flying fox. Over the past 15 years, Biodiversity Australia has worked with 25 councils and private entities whose towns and properties have been overrun by flying foxes, including a colony of 1.5 million that had taken over a campsite in the Northern Territory tourist attraction of Carnarvon Gorge. We've never harmed an animal. It's all about deterrent and behavioral change. As humans, we've created these problems, so we need to be ready to have a solution without lethal means, Noy says. We get people telling us shoot every last one, but it's not doing anything because